Top 5 gnomes in Lost Caverns of Ixalan. Number 5, Compass Gnome.
I've never been bait before.
Too generic for a 2/1 artifact gnome that says when it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land or cave, shuffle, and put it on top.
Hey, I've heard this call before.
We've seen this card before, but Compass Gnome lets you grab a cave, which is cool. Caves are cool. Number 4, Market Gnome. Single white for an 0/3 artifact gnome. It says when it dies, you gain a life and draw a card. Or if it's exiled from the battlefield while you're using it in a crafting ability, you gain a life and draw a card. And if you read the fine print, it also says if Market Gnome touches its nose when you say touch your nose without saying Simon Says, you gain a life and draw a card. Number 3, Scampering Surveyor. 4 generic for a 3/2 artifact gnome that says when it enters the battlefield, search your library for a basic land or a cave and put it into play tapped. Reminiscent of Solemn Simulacrum, except Scampering Surveyor's Joy for Life means you don't get a bonus for offing him like the sad robot. Number 2, Digsite Conservator. Conservator?
Her?
2 generic for a 2/1 artifact gnome that you can sacrifice to exile up to 4 target cards from a single graveyard. Unfortunately, you can only do this at sorcery speed, but it has another ability that says when Digsite Conservator dies, you may pay 4 generic to discover 4. Lost Caverns of Ixalan's limited format will feature graveyard reliant strategies, so having a way to pick off specific cards in a graveyard or turn off your opponent's Descend will be pretty good. And number 1, Threefold Thunderhulk. Hulkamania is running wild. 7 generic for a 0/0 artifact gnome that enters the battlefield with 3 +1/+1 counters on it. Then it says whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, create a number of 1/1 gnome artifact creature tokens equal to its power. Then you can pay 2 generic and sack another artifact to put a +1/+1 counter on it. The Thunderhulk gives Myr Battlesphere vibes, but it plays a little differently. They both bring a gang of tokens, but the Battlesphere acts as more of a juggernaut finisher that closes out the game via 4 direct damage and usually forced chump blocks each turn. Whereas Threefold Thunderhulk can amass a huge gnome army in just a couple turns, which can be more appealing for decks that care about artifact or creature ETBs, or having an ultra wide board. I wouldn't mind seeing this tested in the Vintage Cube alongside Urza, Tolarian Academy, and Opposition, but it may not be enough to knock out the big butt of the battle ball. Honorable mention goes to Cogwork Wrestler. A single blue for a 1/2 artifact gnome with flash that says when it enters the battlefield, target creature and opponent controls gets -2/0. Cogwork Wrestler has my favorite art of all the gnomes because it reminds me of Alexander the Warrior Jar from Elden Ring. And that's all I have to say about that. Follow for more top 5s.